Hi there! I wasn't expecting anybody to be watching. It's my very first episode ever. But there you are. So, hello, and welcome to the first episode of Bread and Gravy presents free piano lessons and survival tips for the apocalypse quarantine. However, we're going to be focusing mostly on piano lessons, and at the end of every episode, we'll give you one survival tip, and hopefully that'll keep you going until this is over. So, I am Jess. Nice to meet you. I am Jess from Bread and Gravy. We are a musical act that is centered up in the Pacific Northwest, and we stay pretty busy, but we're not so busy now. So, I thought, what could I do? And my friend Donnie on the internet said, hey, why don't you start some free piano lessons? And I said, okay. I've always been offering them to them free around these parts. I used to volunteer in one of the schools, and I'm going to keep talking about myself for about 2 or 3 minutes. If you want to fast forward to the lesson, go right ahead, but this is episode 1, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I have taught many range levels, all the way from not knowing anything at all to all the way up to almost decent. So anything after that, I'll pass you off to another teacher, or you can learn on your own, or you can go somewhere else. Now, my certifications and my classifications are, I'm a teacher. The glasses prove that. Teachers have glasses. Everyone knows this. And I am a professional musician, as you can tell, because I have a Bob Marley shirt on. If I wasn't a professional musician, I would not be wearing that. Or if I did, I would be a poser. And I'm not a poser anymore. But I was for a long time. I didn't touch music till I was 28, 29 years old, sometime in that time period. And so that's why I like to teach people who are starting from scratch. Well, that's what I'm best at, is teach people who are starting from scratch. And I teach the way I taught myself. So you're looking for classical training or anything very sophisticated, that is not me. But what I like to brag about is that I can teach people to play on their own after 1, 2, or 3 lessons, depending on how much you work out on your own and how much you pick up. But after a few lessons, you should be able to play music on your own, create on your own, play music on your own, play a song that you've heard on the radio on your own, maybe with some sheet music. The way I teach is a combination of a little bit of theory, a little bit of shapes, and just by showing and doing. So, what we're going to work on today on lesson number 1 is we're going to look at the piano, we're going to understand it, we're going to find middle C, which I'm sure many of you laymen have already heard of. We're going to learn a C scale, and we're going to learn how to make chords in that C scale. So that's everything we're going to tackle today. So I will let you stop looking at my face now, and we'll put it down on the piano, and we'll get started. So, you can only see one small section of the piano right over here. But if you're sitting in front of your own piano or your own keyboard, you'll see that the entire piano looks like this. And that's why I only want you to see this much, because everything from here until here is the entire piano. After that, it's all repeated. I want you to see the pattern. The pattern is there's 2 black and there's 3 black. This pattern is continued throughout the entire piano. This is how you can differentiate the entire range of sounds from the rest of the ranges of sounds. It's from the 2 black and the 3 black, and then they're repeated the whole way through. But that's the entire piano right there. That is every note. You'll have different octaves, higher octaves over there, lower octaves over there, but the notes won't change. So, when you're looking at your piano, look at all the 2 black and the 3 black. Find the 2 black that is most in the middle of your piano or your keyboard. Usually the brand name will be right above it somewhere, but you can see it's the 2 black that's right in the middle of your piano. And to the left of the 2 black, that's your C note. That's your middle C. So go ahead and find all the C's on the entire piano. Look for the 2 black and the white key right to the left of them. That is C. So you can find, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 of them. There's 8 octaves. There's 88 keys in a standard piano, but blah, blah, blah. All I want you to focus on is these 12 keys right here. 13 if you include the next C on up here. So I'm going to play them all. And here's one of the terms I want you to remember from this first lesson. The space between every two notes that are next to each other is called a half step. So if I go up the entire range of all the notes in order, I was just playing by half steps. That is also called playing chromatically, but I just want you to remember the term half step because we'll be using it very often later on. So, you know where the note of C is now. It's something that you never knew before. There's the note of C right there. And it goes all the way through all these tones, all the way up until you get to the next C. So there's 12 different notes, 7 white keys, 5 black keys. And that's all there is to that. Now that you know what a half a step is, the space between every two notes, you can just keep that in your head. I'll come back to that at a later time. So when musicians play in a key, what does that mean? Well, here's the thing. They don't just play all the notes. Unless they play jazz, and then they enjoy hitting all the wrong notes. But that's for lesson 286, and we won't get into that. You have to learn the rules before you can break the rules. And jazz, as much as I'll joke about it with Spinal Tap, about hitting all the wrong notes, it is actually brilliant like that. But you have to know the rules before you can break the rules, and I'm here to teach you some of the rules. So when people play in a key, what does that mean? That means that there's a formula for how the notes from the first note, we're playing in the key of C here, then the first note until the last note, which of those notes in the middle are we hitting? We're not going to hit them all chromatically, a half step at a time. No, there's a key, there's a formula. And I'm not going to get into that formula today, but I will tell you why teachers always teach in the key of C to start. Because the key of C is very simple. The key of C is all the white notes. See that? And that's the major scale that most people play with. There are other scales and there are lots of other complicated things, but this is the primary main one, and what everyone starts learning is the major key right away. I won't tell you how it's formed or what the formula is yet, but for the key of C, again, just know that it's all the white keys. Does that sound familiar? If you've seen The Sound Music, or if you've had music class, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's in the key of C. But you can start with any one of these keys and use that same formula and have the same major scale. Here, I'll do it with D, just to show you. See? But in the key of D, I used some black keys. It got a little more complicated. That's why we're sticking with C. So here's the key of C, and here's the scale of C. All the white notes from C to shining C. Let me go back down. Pretty cool. So if now you know how to find a C next to the two black, and you know how to play the scale of C because you just hit all the white keys. Easy peasy, right? So you've already learned where to find the note of C and how to do a scale of C. I'm not very proficient at teaching proper fingerings, but some of them are so basic that you need to know. So here's the first main one I'm going to show you. So when you're practicing your scale of C, because I know most beginners are going to be using one finger, right? That's what I did. But here's where I have to tell you that individual finger muscles are somewhat important. So find little exercises to strengthen them. Most beginners cannot move that ring finger very well, or the pinky very well. So you have to do exercises to get your fingers to be strong. Can those exercises be working on your scales on the piano or working on different things in the piano? Of course. But just know that that's something that you can't get away with. You eventually have to make them stronger, at least to be able to do some sort of fluid motion independently, and also to be able to independently move 3 of them down or 4 of them down while not using the other ones. That'll come in time. But here's the first fingering I'm going to show you. It'll probably be the last fingering I'll show you for a while. So when I do this little scale of C, right, let's do it in numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So right there we're learning two things. We're learning how to play the scale of C up and down, and we're also counting in fours. Most songs are in a 4/4 time signature, which means there's 4 beats per measure. 1. I know, it's an awesome song. I know. Thank you. But the point is, to think of it in fours will help you in the future. There are lots of different time signatures, but 4/4 is the most common one, much like the key of C is the most common one to be taught. So, how am I doing this so fluidly? There are 8 notes in this scale. 7 different notes, but then it ends with the octave that is the same note. Those are both C notes. Same note, different octaves. So how am I playing that so fluidly? Well, that's where I'm doing something different. So you hit the first 3 notes, thumb, pointer, middle finger, but then instead of hitting your ring finger, you're going to bring your thumb under your ring finger and then put your fingers all back into place, and you're ending with them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Want to count to 8? Sure, I can count to 8. Most musicians can't, but I didn't start off as a musician, so I can count to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, crossover, and let all the fingers finish off on their own. This is not going to be very important later on when you're playing, but it's a good way to start. Most players are not going to freestyle or solo just playing the major scale. They're going to have a lot of other things going on. But this is a good way to start, and also to get your fingers loose and to understand what the scale looks like, what a major scale looks like, and how it feels to play it. So there are good reasons to start with this and to do with this. So again, thumb, pointer, middle, cross over to the thumb, and then finish out all your fingers as they naturally are. Get used to putting all your fingers on one on each key. See, boom, 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 boom. Even though I'm not going to be using these two because of the crossover, I still have them in place. This way they'll be in place later too. Get them all in place. See? And when you're going back down, it's really the same thing, kind of a mirror thing, but also the same thing because you're crossing over on the same note right here. So if you're going down, you used all your fingers to the thumb and then cross over to your middle finger. See that crossover with the middle finger? So again, I'm starting up here with my pinky on the high C. I'm going down, crossover, and I'm ending with my thumb. So I'm ending with my thumb here, and then when I go up, I'm ending with my pinky. Ta-da! Okay, now what do I do? Hold on a minute. I'm going to put you back up here for a minute. Hi there. So we've learned a couple of things already. We learned how to find any C note on the piano to the left of the 2 black. We have learned what a half step is, the space between any 2 notes that are next to each other. Now if you see a white and a white next to each other and there's a black in the middle, then the white and the white are not next to each other. It's the white, black half step, white half step from the black. Every 2 notes that are next to each other consecutively is a half step. We learned the C scale. We did not learn how it was formed yet. We will get into that later. But you can practice that, and you can practice your fingerings with it. You can do it with your left hand and your right hand. For the left hand, it's just the mirror image of the right hand. You start with your pinky. Then when you get up to your thumb, you switch over to your middle finger. This is going up. And then going down is like going up with your right hand. You start on your thumb, cross over after the third, and go all the way down. So there you have it. I have to admit, I find this a little bit awkward. I'm very accustomed to being interrupted when I'm teaching. I've often taught young children, and they always have questions and excited, and they want to bang a little bit, and I always give them a lot of freedom, and there's lots of interruptions, lots of questions. Do you remember that old show, the old Bill Cosby show, Kids Say the Darndest Things? I'm sure I'll remember them some of them as I go along, but there's always something funny that happens when you're working with kids. So if you have kids or if you work with kids, you know what I mean. So I'm always used to getting into... No Bill Cosby jokes? But I was talking about some other show. It had nothing to do with everything. No Bill Cosby jokes at all. Okay. Anyway, so now that we know the key of C, and we know what a half step is, we know where middle C is, now I'm going to teach you about chords. So after your first lesson, you'll be able to play songs in the key of C on your own. Very simple songs, but songs nonetheless. So what is a chord? Anybody? I know there's nobody there. A chord is a combination of any three notes. It's usually within a scale. So we just learned the key of C. You could just imagine the possibilities are endless of putting three notes out of those 8 notes that we did in the scale. I mean, just think of the permutations. If you're a mathematician at all, how many different 3-note combinations can you come up with within that scale? Well, there's an awful lot. So we're going to just start with the basics. And what's amazing is, excuse me, I will wash my hands before I make contact with anybody else, I promise. But until then, I'm going to touch my face all I want. Anyway, don't reach through the screen, whatever you do. So, what was I saying? Oh, hold on a minute. Okay, I'm back. I remember what I was going to say. We're talking about chords now, and I'm going to teach you today, before this lesson is over, 3 chords. 3 chords. And here's the beautiful thing. Almost every song you've ever heard, I don't care what it is. You like death metal, do you like hip hop, you like classical, doesn't matter what kind of music you like. Top 40 for sure. Almost every song you've ever heard, at least in Western culture, has the chords, the same 3 chords in them. Believe it or not, as different as all these songs sound, they all have these 3 main chords in them. Most of them. 90%, more than 90%. So what are these 3 chords? They are called, well, they're called a few different things, but we won't do the technical terms today. We're going to go with numbers today, which is very valid. So it's the 1, 4, and 5 chords. The 1 chord is obviously the center of it all. It's the root. So if you're playing in a C scale, like we're doing today, the root 1 chord will be, you guessed it, C. So let's take a look what that looks like after I say one more thing. Again, the 3 chords in the scale are based off the 1 note, the 4 note, and the 5 note. So remember that. When you learn a scale, the 3 main root chords are based off the 1, the 4, and the 5. I'm going to show you now. Well, here we are back again. 2 black, there's the C, C, D, E, F, G, and that's all the letters that the music goes up to is G, so it starts A, B, C. C to shining C, right? We've done this 100 times already. There's your scale of C. So the 3 root chords of this key are going to be based off the 1, the 4, and the 5. So what does that mean? Here's the 1. How do we make a root chord? We make a root chord by using our 1, 3, and 5 fingers. Okay? So this gets a little bit confusing here, because when we're talking about building chords, we're building chords off the 1 note, the 4 note, and the 5 note. So you have to remember 1, 4, 5. But then, when you're actually making the chord, you say, hey, how do I make a chord? Here's the 1 note. How do I make a chord off of that? Well, put your fingers all in place, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and make a chord with the 1, 3, and 5. There is your root chord for the key of C. There is a C chord. It has C, E, and G. But if you have your fingers all in the right place, you just have to think about your thumb, your middle finger, and your pinky. Or however's comfortable for you. You want to go like that, you want to go like this. I don't really care how you do it. But if you're ever looking for it, just know that if your fingers are all in the right place, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it will be 1, 3, 5, right there. Bam! There's your C chord. Can you play a song with only one chord? Well, if you're good enough to jam like the Grateful Dead or so. You could do a million things just with that one chord. But it'll be boring at the end of the day. So there's your one chord. Okay, so where would my 4 chord be? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's an F. There's my 4 chord. Same configuration, same shape as the C chord. A lot of people teach with just shapes. They don't teach any theory. So remember that in the key of C, there are so many chords that are in this shape. In fact, you could actually go up the whole thing. I'm talking about 1, 4, 5, but you can do all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up. Same shape. The last one's a little wacky. The last one's a little wacky, and it's actually complicated if you explain it in theory, but the rest actually makes sense, and they all work if you keep that same shape, 1, 3, 5 with your fingers. You could actually play all of them. But for today, we're working on the main 3, the top 3 that are in almost every song that you've ever heard. So there's the 1 chord. Here's the 4 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. Feel that pull? Do you feel that pull when you play this? It wants you to go back to there. Interesting, isn't it? So remember that. The fourth in the scale always makes you want to go back to the 1. Remember that for the future. So where's our 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So in the key of C, we're calling these numbers 1, 4, 5. But in the key of C, what are they actually? They're the C chord, the F chord, and the G chord. Right there. So we can do a whole song now. Wasn't the best song in the world, but are you getting the idea? You can do anything you want. Play around with a C chord for a while, and then when you get bored, go up to the F. Now the G. There's so many things you can do. So in the key of C alone, you have the 3 major chords, C, F, and G. And you also know how to do the scale. So let's play a C chord and do some scale. A lot of different things you can do. So I think that's about all I'm going to cover today. Let me get this back up here. That's all I'm going to cover in this first lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to learn other things. Other things. I'll tell you what they are, but I'll probably change my mind before then, and I'll also look for some of your questions. But the goal is, after 2 or 3 lessons, you should be able to figure out, at least know how to play anything on your own. Right now, you already know. If you can get those shapes figured out and get your fingers to listen to your brain, then you could already have a little bit of fun. But if your fingers aren't there, you can work on those simple scale, the simple major scale, and the simple chords, that shape, whatever's most comfortable for you. In the future, you will be playing more than 3-note chords. Well, maybe. I mean, it's your choice. But I want to show you. So there's how I play my 3-note root chord when I'm just playing a 3-note root chord. But when I want to add in the extra C, the octave, to make it a more full-sounding chord, it's like that. So I very often hit my 3-note chord like that. But you can hit it like that, you can hit it like that, a lot of more Technical and classical players play like this. More flexibility with the fingers like that way. There's lots of different ways to do it. Do whatever's comfortable for you. Just remember the rules on how to make a root chord from the 1 in the scale, in the key of C, the 1, the 4, and the 5. Those are the 3 major ones. So some of the things I will say we'll work on next time is some of the other chords in the scale, and how the formula is formed to make a key, and then you can play in any of these keys, not just C. Remember, there's 12 of them. And there's also 2 keys for each note. So this is the key of C major scale. But there's also the key of C minor. So every note has a major scale and a minor scale. There's a lot to learn if you want to, but you don't have to learn that much in order to just play on your own. So again, I'm Jess from Bread and Gravy. Thanks for joining us, and before I forget, I will leave you with your survival apocalypse quarantine tip for the day. Go out in your house, look around, find the people that live there. You may not have talked to them much before. You may not even know some of their names. You may not know them very well, but feel free, go up to them, talk to them, have a conversation, find out more about them. They might be interesting. You never know. Take a chance. Anyway, peace. See you next time.